Let's see. Hey guys, we are live today with author Estelle Laure. Is that pronounced correctly?
Laure.
Laure? It's Laure?
Yes, it's Laure.
Oh, okay. Awesome. I love that. I kept trying to spell Lori because I've been spelling Lori everywhere lately. So it's like I have to remind myself to not add an I in there somewhere.
Yeah, it's a French name, so it's just Laure.
Oh, I love it. That's awesome. Well, we are here today with her newest release, Mayhem. It is Mayhem, right?
Mayhem.
I was like,
yeah.
I got that right. All right. And you guys know, as usual, if you have any questions, you can toss them in the live chat below or to the side, wherever you happen to see it. And if for some reason YouTube decides to be mean and won't let you post a comment, you can tweet out to me, you can DM me, or you can toss it into the comments or DM me on Instagram or Facebook. Toss the questions out there and I will find them as long as you tag me. So we're going to get into this. And I hope everybody has a great time. Thank you so much for coming on the show.
Thank you for having me. This is great.
And I love, we were talking earlier, I love that you have bookish tattoos because that's like all I have. I have a Shadow Hunters and
nice.
That's so pretty. That's so pretty. Mine totally need touched up. So tell us a little bit about you and your journey to becoming an author. And this is not your debut. You have a couple of their books out. So
right. So my first book is called This Raging Light, and it came out in 2015, and like very end of 2015, and has been widely translated, and it was a lot of fun, but it was definitely contemporary realistic. There were not any magical elements. And then my second book is called But Then I Came Back, and that is more magical realism. And so this is really my first step into actual magic, actual paranormal elements. I used to write that, but when I actually started getting published, it was more for the contemporary realistic. So that's where we are right now. I have a bunch of books coming out over the next couple of years, a trilogy for Disney, a contemporary realistic for Viking, and another with Wednesday, who did Mayhem. So things are just rolling. And yeah, that's kind of where we are now.
Woohoo, man, that sounds like a lot. Now, are all those books done, or are you still in the process of writing them?
Yeah, no.
I wish.
Yeah, I have one of the books for the trilogy for Disney done. Like we're in our very last round of copy edits now, and the first draft of the second one done, and I'm working on various drafts of the other ones. So it's just constantly a moving target. And I have to say, though, it's really nice just constantly being immersed in something. It's high pressure having the deadlines and everything and really wanting to get it right. But it's just such an honor, like what a good problem to have.
I know that feeling.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, books, and more books.
Right.
So can you tell us anything about your books that are coming out at all, or?
Sure. So let's see. City of Villains is, do you want to know about Mayhem? Or
yeah, of course.
Okay. So Mayhem came out on Tuesday. It is about a girl who she knows something is kind of off about herself and off about her mom. And she goes back to her hometown, Santa Maria, and she meets some kids that are all living with her aunt. And she discovers that her family is like they're kind of overseers of this town and protectors of this town. And so it's also the kind of place that attracts a lot of mischief. So it attracts, people who are criminal, and then this family sort of takes care of those problems. So it's about self-discovery. There's a lot of violence in it, just because the backstory is sort of violent. So, and the history of her family is sort of violent. But it was partially based on the Lost Boys. And it's been so interesting looking at different reviews, because some of them are like, oh, the Lost Boys part was a little heavy handed. And then some of them are like, I didn't see the Lost Boys in there at all. So, there's wide variety of opinions. But what I wanted to bring forward from the Lost Boys not only was the setting, because if you've seen that movie, it takes place in Santa Cruz. Well, it was filmed in Santa Cruz in California, and I grew up in the Bay Area, so Santa Cruz was sort of a place that we would go on weekends to ride the rides. And when that movie came out, I was 12, and I was like mesmerized by the fact that Santa Cruz was there, and it had that feeling of like summer nights and, bad kids and like rides and cotton candy and, concerts. And so I really wanted to bring that energy into it, so that it would be something that was fun. But also, when I started digging into backstory and really trying to make these characters three-dimensional, I realized I really couldn't just leave it the way it was in the Lost Boys. Like, there's very little depth. It's awesome, but it's not deep. So I had to dig, and try to figure out that part. So that's Mayhem. You want me to keep going?
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh, yeah.
Okay. So then the next book's the City of Villains trilogy that I'm doing for Disney. It was kind of funny the way that came about, because I really wanted to work in the Disney universe. And my editor had just started doing IP stuff for them, and first approached my agent saying, well, maybe she can do like a rewrite of a princess story or something. But then she looked at my writing and she was like, oh my gosh, this is too dark. There's no way she can't do that. So she sort of conceived of this trilogy where all the Disney villains are teenagers. And there's sort of a conspiracy happening within this, they've been saying Gotham-esque, but it really has its own mythology. Like, I built a whole totally different kind of world, but it is that sort of New York City-scape kind of place, with a lot of crime happening. But it was the most fun. It's like Maleficent and Ursula and Captain Hook and, so there's all these characters. Some characters I can't say are a part of it, but it's just been so much fun. It's like when you're a kid. Well, when I was a kid, I watched all the Disney movies.
Right.
Loved them all, and I especially loved all the villains. And so it's been so fun to like play in that universe, and they've given me really a lot of license to do what I want to do. So I'm very excited for that one.
Well, that's good though. It kind of reminds me of like maybe like a Disney version of like Games of New or the Gangs of New York or something like that.
Something like that. It has kind of different factions, and I hate to use the word factions because of that, but you know what I mean. Like, it's
if it works, it works.
Different sides, and it's just a ton of fun. Yeah.
Sounds like it. Awesome. And then you said you had another book with Viking.
I have a book coming out with Viking next year that's called Practice Girl. And that is about a girl who finds out she's like a manager on the high school wrestling team. And she finds out very quickly at the beginning of the book that she has been being used for sexual practice by the boys on the team. Like, she thinks she's having relationships with them, but really they're trying to get good at sex. So, so that has also been a lot of fun. I really enjoy working with material that is potentially polarizing. Not because I love disturbing material per se. I think we all experience disturbances as human beings and have these really difficult relationships and have to cope with trauma. And I wouldn't be comfortable writing a book that just like skipped over.
Right.
Otherwise I'm not interested.
Hey, some of the best books that I've read deal with, those kind of situations. I mean, there was one called, I think it was Girl Made of Stars.
Oh yeah.
And that was crazy, where her boyfriend gets accused of raping her best friend or her sister. I don't remember. He got accused of doing something. And then there was another one by I think Katie Cross that I think was under one of her other names though, and it deals with a girl's friend had gotten gang raped or something like that. I don't remember. And I mean, those were phenomenal stories. I mean, as long as you're doing it correctly, which I think you have, especially in this one, you know, because it deals with a lot of those darker themes. I mean, go with it, because I mean, there's a lot of people out there that have dealt with these kind of issues. You know, growing up, I was molested by 3 different men in my life. You know, it happens.
It happens a lot.
Yeah.
And I went to get sensitivity readers for the rape scene in Mayhem. You know, I was really careful not to make it too graphic. I know this is YA. I didn't want it to be so that kids couldn't read it comfortably, but this has to be that scene. We tried several different ways. That has to be how the origin story.
Right.
And I had no problem finding people to read, because so many people have experienced sexual abuse or rape that it isn't, you walk 10 feet and you run into somebody who's experienced that. So I think, while I'm not completely, like, I don't want to do that lightly. I certainly don't want to deal with rape in every single story. You know, that's not like,
you know what I'm trying to do.
And Practice Girl isn't about that. It's more about navigating romantic relationships and not understanding necessarily where boys are coming from during that time period, which is very confusing. But I think we have to also be okay with talking about it, because kids are, you know, 14 and up, they really are being exposed to this stuff, and they are having to navigate it. And it's important to me that people who have experienced abuse really feel empowered, you know, when they read my stuff. So
that's what I was about to say, is that, you know, your books, you know, can give a sense of empowerment to people that have gone through it, because, you know, 20, 30 years ago, you really wouldn't have anything like that. It was all hush hush. If you had been abused, you know, you didn't tell anybody. It was just a deep, dark secret. And it's like, you know, nowadays we want people to speak out about it. You know, if you're abused, speak out about it, tell somebody, go to the hospital. You know, you don't just sit there and hide it and just basically live with it and swipe it under the rug.
Exactly. Yep. And I think the more we say it out loud and the more we talk about those experiences, the less stigma there is around it, and the more people are able to speak about it. And it's interesting for me, because I'm old enough now that I've lived through the time period where it was, you know, totally blame the victim, totally, you know, domestic violence being something that you didn't talk about, or that was just ignored by the police or whatever. And now it's changing so much, and it's kind of gratifying to be alive at this time to see how it's shifting and changing. We have a long way to go, but I think we've made progress.
We're going in the right direction.
Yeah.
So we have a writing question. Allie wants to know, speaking of Disney villains, who is your favorite?
Oh boy, I'm not sure I can answer that honestly due to secrets, but I will say, I think my very favorite is Maleficent. And I think that is because she is just so stone cold. Like, I love Ursula because she's super fun and she's like a little bit silly and she does all her dancing and stuff. And I love that. But I really love as an author, working with the character of Maleficent, because she's so rough. Like, she says the things that no one else will say, and she's just so cold. So it's fun, you know, writing dialogue for her and writing one-liners for her is a lot of fun.
Cool. And then your other book that's coming out with Wednesday Books, what is that one?
Oh, that is called Remember Me. And it is also, so the way that this was kind of based on The Lost Boys, or took inspiration from The Lost Boys, that one is doing the same with Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind. Do you remember that movie?
I don't think I've seen that one.
So
I've even heard of that one.
gotta watch it. It's so good. It's a movie about a guy who finds out his girlfriend has erased him from her memory, from him.
Oh, wow.
And so he decides to do the same thing, sort of as revenge. But then once he's doing it, he doesn't want to do it anymore. So, my thing is, it's based on the idea of memory and dealing in memory and pain. Surprise, surprise. But like how do we integrate traumatic memories rather than just trying to cut them out and not dealing with them?
Right.
So that's kind of what it's about. But I love that movie. It's super quirky and very romantic. And although mine is not as romantic and is more, delving into some other more darker kind of things, it's still, I love that idea that if something is wrong, you're just going to remove it.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
That sounds really cool.
Thanks.
All right. So, you have done many a title and you're doing even more. Does it ever get easier to come up with something to write about?
So far, I have not had that problem. I think my first book deal was a 2-book deal, and I hadn't really thought beyond the first book. And so when I decided to write, but then I came back, it did feel panicky. I was very scared. And this is a common thing that you hear, that the second book is what someone put it, the second book is a bear. I think Laura Ruby said that to me. And it really does feel that way. It's like, okay, you've had this success, you want another success, but can you muster the same energy, or will you have another story to tell? And so that one was definitely the hardest for me to write. This one, Mayhem, took many drafts and a lot of shifts and changes. And I worked really closely with my editor, Sarah Goodman, to get it where we wanted it. But it didn't feel I didn't have the same like frozen panic that I had when I was writing, but then I came back. And I think it's just kind of a roller coaster process. Writing it's so nebulous. Every book is different. The connection to every book is different. The way that you feel while you're writing every book is different. And sometimes words just flow, and sometimes they're more difficult, and sometimes concepts are complex, and sometimes they're simpler. And it depends a lot on your editor and how involved they are. There's just a lot. There's a lot that goes into it. And so I have not had a problem thinking of topics, but I would say the writing itself can be more or less difficult.
Okay. Like figuring out okay, I've got a topic. What am I going to do with it?
Yeah. And also like for Remember Me, I've already gone back and forth, and I've written it third person and first person and in present and in past, because you're dealing with memory. And so you have to decide what is going to be the best way to tell this story. And should it be in third person where you can move around the memory, or should it be in first person where you're really locked into the way a person is thinking or feeling, because in a lot of ways first person is limiting. So it's just interesting trying to make those decisions, and every time you approach a new book, you have to make those decisions all over again.
Right. Because sometimes it works one way and then other times it doesn't.
Yeah. So far I'm sticking with the first person for the most part. But yeah, it's I did write a short story in third person, and it was a lot of fun to be able to have a little more freedom.
Right.
So who knows?
I think of movies as in kind of third person, because it's you're like God and you can see everything that's going on.
Well, and that was the big thing with this book, with Mayhem, was looking at the Lost Boys and thinking, well, what can I take and what can I not take?
Right.
So much of it bounces around between the vampires and between the brothers and all these different things that you can't do if you're first person.
Right.
And I just felt like it was really important to stay first person and stay with Mayhem and her voice. So
right. I think it worked out really well.
Thank you.
I love one of the quotes that you had taken from the Lost Boys. It's towards the end, and I don't remember who says it, but it was like, they love this place except for all the vampires. And I'm like,
Well,
I
that's like
love
the
that.
last line in
Yeah.
the movie where the
Yeah.
grandma busts through the door and like breaks down the wall, and he's got his little like Willie Nelson bandana on. So good.
It definitely makes you want to sit down and watch that movie again. It's like I was born in '82, and it's like that movie was something that we watched, on occasion, and it definitely makes you want to watch it again. Gotta watch it.
I tried to put like half a dozen Easter egg kind of things in there for people who do love it. It was funny because I do have friends who have kids who were like, that movie's boring. I'm like, what? How could you say that thing?
It's so bad. I know. My youngest, she's 9. She just got her Outcrate Junior box yesterday, and she's looking at the mug that she's gotten. I'm like, she's like, who's Matilda? And I'm like, oh goodness, that's right. You haven't seen that movie.
Yeah.
Like from like the 90s or the 2000s or something. We'll have to see if it's on Netflix or something.
Yep. Yep. Exactly.
Fandoms that the kids just don't know.
Yep. I know.
See, we have another writing question.
Okay.
All of the characters in this title were so powerful. How did you create them, and who was your favorite?
Oh God. Well, okay, I will say this. That's a really hard question because I actually love all of the characters so much. Like I really connected to all of them. And so I tried to answer this when I got like 90 questions from bloggers, and I tried to answer. It was asked a number of times, and I felt like I was giving a different answer every time because like I have a very special place in my heart for Kid, who is, sort of the blonde, curly-haired youngest one who would be like a mirror for Laddie in The Lost Boys. And I loved her. I love how spunky she is and that she's sort of like the wisest character in there. And she physically, I hope my friend Jess is watching, or maybe I hope she's not, but I haven't even told my friend this, but I sort of physically based her on my friend Jess, who is biracial and who is blonde, super blonde. And I just love the way she looks. And so I when I was doing the characters, she came to mind. And the same goes for Nev. I had a group of friends when I was a teenager that were all sort of like renegade, kind of very rebellious, very strong personalities, and I sort of smashed them all into one. But some of the conversations that are in the book, happened. Like I tried to capture that intensity of friendship that you can have when you're 15 or 16 and you can't really ever have it again because once you're an adult, it changes. And so she's also a really special character for me. And then I'll say one more. I feel like Roxy, even though I have seen people say that she drove them crazy because she's such like a pill popper and like always falling down. But I loved her because I felt like for a mom to have, it felt like a real person to me, or maybe like the weakest parts of myself as a mother, maybe coming through, that we're fallible, even though we're moms. And I wanted her to be 3-dimensional in that way.
That's awesome. Just going and checking social media here really quick, see if anybody else had popped anything over there. Thank you guys who have submitted questions. Thank you for doing them via DM because I get so many notifications lately. My goodness. Alrighty, so let's see. The next question is, do you think you would ever do a full-on fantasy?
I think that City of Villains is creeping into that space because of the amount of world building that I had to do. Because it is a space where there are magical powers and it is sort of integrated. Like the kind of fantasy that would be derived from Tolkien with sort of elves and that sort of thing. I don't know. Like, I don't know if I'm capable of doing that. And it's almost because I feel like so many people have mastered it. They've done such a fabulous job. Like, I don't know how I would approach dragons or something like
Right.
that.
Well, I mean, after reading Mayhem, because I haven't read any of your other books, but after reading Mayhem, I think you could probably do something really cool with maybe like horror and fantasy.
Yeah, exactly. Like
Really cool.
that totally appeals to me.
That would be really cool.
I love horror. I think it would be super fun to go a little further into that. And I love magic. But it's just those mythical creatures. Like if I was going to do it again, like with the Slua, where I was able to connect it to this Irish mythology in this book, I feel, or Celtic, I feel like I would want to do something like that, where it wasn't like selkies and fairies. And I mean, I love fairies. Anyone who's known me could tell you that I used to walk around like covered in fairy jewelry and just, you know, I was like, inside my soul, I am a fairy. But like, it's been done so well. Like, I Hive, for Holly Black's book, is so good. And then also the series she just did, I tore through that.
Right. Oh, the Co-Prince was so good.
Oh, so good. And so I just feel like I wouldn't dare, you know, so I'd have to find something new. But I would do a fantasy. I just don't know. I haven't had the thing where I'm like, oh, this, you know.
Right. Well, there is a book out called like 10,000 Magical Creatures. It's amazing. It is like so thick, and it is just nothing but magical creatures through, you know, like everything mythology you could think of, and it gives you like little snippets of what each creature is. I recommend that to any fantasy author who is thinking about doing something, because I mean, you could do something completely out of blue that nobody's ever heard of before.
Yeah, and what I love is what like Maggie Stiefvater does, where there's this hybrid of fantasy. I mean, Scorpio Races, that's full on fantasy, but like the other ones that she's done, a lot of the ones that I've read, there's this mix between our world as we know it and the fantastical elements. And I love that. I love feeling like our real world, or our world as we know it, is being infiltrated.
Oh yeah.
By magic.
Yeah.
I love that.
Those are a lot of those are really good. I know there was one out years ago. It's by a dual author, Vivian. I can never pronounce that woman's last name, or no, I think that's her first name. So it starts with an S. I think it's an Irish name or something. And Jenny Han, Burn for Burn.
Oh, Siobhan Vivian.
Yeah, that one.
Yeah. I have that one right here.
So horrible names. Have you read it?
I haven't read it yet. No,
you need to read those, because like halfway
vengeance, right? It's a revenge thing.
Yeah, it's a revenge thing, and it's technically contemporary, but like it's either halfway through the first book or the second book. They just like throw this paranormal aspect in there that if you would have been a girl, you know, in the hallway and you saw this happen, you would have just been like shit crap in your pants and like, oh no, go the other way. Because it is done just so seamlessly. I have never read another book that has done something like that. Just like, you know, if you had witnessed it, it would have been like, okay, this is happening.
Now I'm totally intrigued.
I'm walking I'm going the opposite direction. It was.
I love Jenny Han. She is like magical. She's a magical writer. Yeah.
I met her before. She's so nice. So we have another writing question. Joanna says, what writers have inspired you?
Oh my gosh, so many. I mean, I've been really lucky to, my journey to like actually getting published was in and of itself almost unbelievably magical. And I had the great fortune to have some really amazing mentors. And so first inspiration, definitely Laura Ruby, definitely Matt de la Pena, definitely Martine Levitt. And then I started to expand and really went into like reading, and like Mary Pearson and Holly Black with, you know, Maggie Stiefvater, like I said. I absolutely adore Jenny Han. I adore Siobhan Vivian. I'm looking over here now. Now, A.S. King was huge for me. Amy King, really amazing. I, you know, couldn't even believe how brilliant she is when I read her books. And like more recently, I think Deb Coletti and Mindy McGinnis. I absolutely adore Danielle Clayton. I adore Jeff Sentner, David Arnold, Jasmine Varga. I mean, I just have like this huge list of people that I've been fortunate enough to meet, you know, and interact with, and talking to them not only about their books, but their writing process, and like navigating the publishing world, which is not easy and is a huge roller coaster. It's just been so inspiring, and I feel super lucky. Yeah. So many. Rainbow Rowell. Oh my gosh.
My oldest loves her. What is it? Carry On.
Yeah, I haven't read that one yet, but I just love her voice, you know.
Right. I love what was the one that I read from her? Fangirl. I love Fangirl. Yeah. That was so cute.
Yes. And I love that there's one that's like a lesser known, I think it's an adult, called Telephone. I think
okay. Something like that. Like I can picture the cover.
Yeah, it's like she calls and she's calling her husband 20 years ago or something.
Right.
When their marriage is on the rocks. It's really good.
That's cool. So let's talk about this cover. Oh my goodness. I love the cover of Mayhem. So how did this cover come about? Where did the elements come from? Did you have any say in the matter?
Well, I mean, they sent it to me and I was blown away. And so like, I didn't really I had some input because the first version, I wish I could show you, but you know, they don't put all of the things. It's like a mock-up. Mm-hmm. But I saw it and was just like, oh my God. Like, I guess I had this idea in my mind that it was going to look more paranormally. Mm-hmm. And so when I first saw it, I was like, oh my gosh. And then immediately was overcome by this feeling of like, wow, they really did something super cool here. And so you've got the moon, the water, there's the friends in the water, and then there's the crow up here, and then there's always mention of cliffs and caves, so she's sort of at the top of the cave, and then she's got her blue hair at the bottom. And I just thought it gives it this energy that is just like, you want to look at it, or at least that's how I felt. I think it's just so beautifully packaged, and I love the blue and orange. I don't know. I love it.
It reminds me of like the movie posters of like The Craft and like the early movie of like Buffy the Vampire Slayer and stuff. Like it just kind of has that iconic feel to it that just it works so well. I love it so much.
Yeah, I love it. I'm so honored. I mean, I was just gushing over it. I was so happy.
Have you gotten to put input for any of your other books at all, or no?
Well, okay, so I did have input in this. I was like, can we have the crow and can we have the friends? And they were like, yeah, we were going to do that anyway. And then there's also the missing poster, which is
cool.
It's kind of cool if you look at it. You could take a while to look at it because of all these little things. And so the only real input that I had where I like chose from different things was for the paperback of This Raging Light, but then I came back, like the way they're packaged. They sent me some different images and I was like, I love this one. And so that's the most input I've had. But you always want to be able to have, you know, some say in it. It's because if it's awful, but Wednesday does not mess around. Like their books, if you go look at all of their books, they are so beautifully produced.
Oh, they do really well.
Oh my God. Gorgeous.
So nice.
Yeah.
It's like everybody seems to be putting like people on the covers right now.
Yeah, is that true? I haven't. Yeah, it is true.
Yeah, because I just like the last couple of books that I've read, they all have people on the covers in one way, shape, or form.
Right. Let me see here.
It's all crazy. I think the only one that actually hasn't was Evercurse. It doesn't have any people on the front of it. It's got flowers.
These are the This Raging Light.
Pretty.
And then this is, but then I came back. So you said that you liked my tattoo, and that's.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I love that. I love that cover. That's pretty. The black and white with the pink that like makes it pop like so much.
Yeah. So this is my first people cover. City of Villains has people too.
Well, it kind of has to.
Yeah.
Yeah. Am I like when you think the City of Villains, and you think like a cityscape and the villains.
Yeah, exactly.
And then just toss some other stuff in there.
Yeah.
So let's see. So what aspects of the creating process do you enjoy most, and how do you plot out your, like, are you, what is it called, a pantser or
Water.
plotter?
Okay, so I'm different with every book. I'm trying to get myself together because I think the longer I write, the less of a pantser I am. In the beginning, like when I wrote This Raging Light, I just wrote. I was just writing sort of what was coming to me and the story that was in my heart. And sometimes I would write myself into a brick wall and have to like get myself out of a corner. And I probably rewrote it, 4 or 5 times from scratch before I ever gave it to my agent or anything. And then since then, and then I did the same with But Then I Came Back, where I was just writing. Since then, I have totally started using documents and plotting things out. And the reason is because I don't think it makes a difference in the imagination process. Like I'm learning that it is the same thing, whether you're lying on your bed and kind of have your eyes closed and are just imagining the story and then writing out scene cards, or whether you're doing it in real time, the same sort of mechanisms take place. So I have a working document now that I have everything plotted out, but then it's very fluid. So like if I discover in chapter 4 that something is very different than I thought it was going to be, I just go into my working document and change everything.
Oh, wow.
And I take the time to go through and refine it as I go. And some projects are super clear. And obviously when you're doing IP, you're working with an editor and you're brainstorming and you're figuring it out. And then you have a document that's chapter 1, chapter 2, chapter 3. That's different than the work I do by myself, where I'm constantly changing things. I'm not doing that with IP because it's intellectual property. That's, a story we've figured out together. It's more concrete. But this is like, like I'm working on Remember Me right now, and I have all my scenes written out, but I can maybe just make a discovery and then I'll just go back in and fix it. So I don't know if I'll ever try to tackle a novel again, just like, this is what I think it's going to be.
Right.
Because my experience is that not putting serious thought into where the plot is going to go, because I'm so character driven, I will just follow the character. And sometimes it's like, nope, we need to redirect so that, because I think you still have to maintain tension. You still have to maintain stakes. You still have to do all these other things. And you can't just let that drop because you're following your bliss.
They can't go walk around the mall for 2 hours doing absolutely nothing.
Yeah. And I think that's fine stuff to do to get to know your character and, explore relationships and all of that kind of stuff. Like, I think that's completely valid. But for me, I need to know like where I'm going and what the point is. And really building on a theme is the easiest thing for me. Like we're building on the theme of, for Remember Me, like memory and pain and how we cope with trauma. And so then I can start to plot it out. For me, that doesn't take away from the magic. It just kind of gives me like a line to follow. So I'm not totally lost.
I've heard from other authors that I've talked to that plotting stuff out is just so much faster, and it's just so much easier when you go to actually write the book.
Yeah.
Like you can do what you just stated, you can go back and fix little things, but know where you're going.
And I know it's pantsing is totally works for a lot of authors. So no judgment. It's just, I've had to rewrite everything multiple times, like multiple times from scratch. And when you have deadlines and all these other things happening, it's just really worth it to do the work ahead of time and try to figure it out.
Right. Understand that one. Like if I've had my calendar crash. Well, from a book bloggers thing, like I've had my calendar completely crash on me where it was deleted, and I'm like, I don't know what I'm supposed to read next. So it's like not exactly the same thing, but it's horrible. But no, yeah, I have a few books that I'm almost done with, and I am not a plotter. I will just sit down. I am a pantser. I am a full pantser. I don't even know what I would even do to try to sit down and plot out a book. Now, there has been times where just all of a sudden I'll be writing. I'm like, oh, I know how this is going to end. And I'll like tab like all the way down and like fill that out like a vague thing of what's gonna happen. But I couldn't do the plotting.
Well, I saw Amy King give a lecture once, and she was talking about how she called it a spontaneous plotgasm, where like all of this stuff she hadn't connected suddenly comes together, and she's like, oh, that's what it was about, And I think that's the advantage of pantsing, is that you can have those like really big moments where you're like, I didn't even know that's what my imagination was doing,
The ones that really suck though is like when one happened a couple weeks ago where I was really trying to refine everything that I had done and kind of like getting rid of, because I had like 80 books that I had started, and I was trying to like I know, and like some of them would have like maybe 2 sentences, some of them would have like 20,000 words. I think the one that I spent the most time on has, I think, 57,000 words, something like that to it. And that one's like an apocalyptic fantasy type thing. But I was trying to like take stuff and like, okay, we're just gonna merge this one with this one and that one with this one. And 3 stories ended up like merging together, and I was like almost asleep. And it was so far gone, like there was no way I was gonna actually get up and fix this. I'm like, I'm gonna forget about this tomorrow. Luckily, I did not. So I got to write it down. I was so excited.
Yeah, awesome. That's the fun stuff.
So have you had anything like that happen where, you just, an idea pops in your head and you just have to like pull off the side of the road to write it down? Or?
Well, I'm a huge fan of Joan Didion, and she said that the difference between having a notebook or not having a notebook is writing or not writing. So I do try to have, I probably just mangled that quote, but I think it's something like that. So I always have something like this with me. And I try to write stuff down when I think of it. And I also make notes to myself in the manuscript that are not always very nice. I'm like, fix this, stupid, or like, make this better. This is terrible. But I'll also, like, if I'm thinking about something that I want to connect to later, I'll just put a note. And so, yeah, I tend to like have an idea, stick with that idea until it's done, and then something else always comes. Like now I don't have that fear that I'm going to finish and I'm never going to think of another thing to write. But I don't tend to be inundated with ideas when I'm already working on something. It's like my brain is just so far deep into that story that most of my ideas are about that story. And not like you.
Oh yeah, I'm like everywhere. I've gotten like, I'll just be scrolling through Facebook and then somebody go like, oh hey, this picture's really cool off of like their Pinterest, and I'm like, oh, this would make a really good book. And I'll just like I just toss everything in like my notes. So
wow, I mean that's so amazing. Yeah, I know a lot of people are like that, and they get distracted. Actually, like they'll be writing one thing and be like, oh, shiny. I get that. What I like, I do have a couple of picture books coming out in the next couple of years, and those are the ideas that come to me when I'm working on a novel, and they're sort of like palette cleansers, or like things where I am I've hit a wall in the novel and I'm like totally burnt out on working on it, and then all of a sudden something pops up and I'm like, oh, that would be a great picture book. And they don't always work, but I do get more of those because it's like picture books are looking at, the world around us, and experiences that maybe people don't notice, and they sort of shine a light on that in a poetic way. So it's like using a different part of the brain.
Mm-hmm. That's cool. So, of course, we've all been stuck in, well, I haven't, I'm still working, but for the most part, everybody has been stuck at home and stuff. What have you been reading?
First of all, what's your job?
I actually work at a used bookstore.
Not that. That's right. And you're going in person.
Yeah. Oh, I just ripped out my headphone. Yeah. A local store changed hands, and they needed somebody that knew books, so I got hired. Lucky me.
That's awesome. That's great. So I'm usually reading like 3 or 4 things at the same time. That's where I'm because I usually am listening to something on Audible. I usually have a couple going. I like to have nonfiction, adult fiction, YA, and maybe middle grade all going at the same time. So
I would get so confused. Like when you were like writing 3 books at once, I would be like, I would end up putting like this character in that book or something or other, and I would get back and be like, they're not in this book.
Your book is, I mean, your reading schedule is more controlled by what you're doing with interviews, right?
Yeah, basically, I will take out the books because I've learned my lesson. I've learned my lesson. Don't try to do like a stack of books in 1 week. It's just no. With a job, I fully these people that are amazing booktubers and stuff like Emma Books and Sasha Ellsberg and stuff, that they have, like jobs and then they're authors and booktubers and all this stuff. I hail you completely because my God, I could not see editing videos and writing books and going to work and going to school and all of this all at once. I would die.
Right.
I would die. So yeah, I will put in like next week. I've got 1 person coming on, so I'll have their book, and then I have 3 other books to do, which I actually picked out 4 books because I have my book club to do. So I've got like 4 to 5 books a week, and that is it.
That's a lot. 4 to 5 books a week. That's a lot. I know there are people who do like 10. I have a couple crazy like that.
That's what I used to do. I was doing about 30 to 40 books a month, but that included, things that I ended up not enjoying, so I would DNF it. So,
right. Do you have a spreadsheet?
I have a calendar. I've got my Google Calendar that is connected to my phone and my iPad, so I always know what I'm doing, and then I have, everything that everybody else is doing. So this month I actually was like, I can't do 4 reviews a day anymore. It's way too much. So we're down to 3 reviews a day instead, which is still a lot of books or that's like 21 posts a week. And it's all nothing but reviews. So
that's why you have 2 million views. So congratulations. So I'm reading right now. I actually brought these. I'm reading Other Words for Balm by Jasmine Warga, and it was a Newbery Honor book. And I don't know, she's just collecting accolades left and right, and it's written in verse. It's about a little girl who comes to the United States from Syria, and it's amazing. And then I'm reading this, Pet, which is like unlike anything that I have ever read before, and it's about a little girl. She's trans, and her mom's an artist, and she pulls a monster out of the canvas. But then it turns out it's not a monster, it's an angel, and its name is Pet. And it's just so cool. And I've like never read anything that is like, the words are so deliberate. It's beautiful language. There's a lot of characters that you just don't see represented in books usually. So it's really great. And then I'm reading How to Be Anti-Racist. And I'm also reading My Dark Vanessa. I'm just finishing that.
I don't think I've heard of that one.
Oh my God. It's adult. It's about a girl or a woman who's had a relationship and been abused by a teacher in her when she was 15. And so it's totally a Me Too book, and it's very disturbing and difficult to read. So trigger warning on every level for that one.
Right?
Yeah.
Oh, man. You going in deep, man.
Yeah.
So is there anything that you can't wait to come out that you want to get your hands on?
Well, I have infiltrated NetGalley. So
They have an app now.
really?
Yeah, they have an app now. It's really weird because like when I got onto it, it has stuff on here from like forever ago. I was like, wait, God, I reviewed that like 4 years ago.
Yeah, and
Yeah,
now it's just downloadable.
yeah. So you can
Yeah,
just like you can do everything off like your phone or your iPad probably. It's nice. I mean, it's
yeah.
really nice. And you can actually do their audiobooks because they have audiobooks now. You can do all those
Oh yeah.
right off the
I
app. It's convenient.
So there are a few that I was really excited to read, but I don't know if I'm going to remember all the names offhand. But one of them was called Loner, I'm pretty sure, and then there's the new Sarah Shepard, Some Murder
Ooh.
something, and then Alice Hoffman has another from the Practical Magic series.
What?
Yeah, Magic Lessons or something like that, I think it's called.
Oh, I heard something a couple months ago that they were thinking about doing a reboot of that.
Oh,
They're rebooting everything.
no, they should not do that.
And The Stand. They're
Well,
just
The
rebooting
Stand could use a
everything.
reboot. That was pretty. I mean, that was not amazing.
Yeah, no. I like The Stand, so I'm excited to see what they do with it.
You
And
like the movie or the book or the
the
series?
movie, the movie. I think it was like the first movie with Mary Ringwald or somebody was in it. I don't even remember. It's been so long since I watched that.
Yeah, I haven't seen it in a long time, but I just remember that it was not how I pictured it in my head.
Right.
You know, which it never is. It
Yeah.
never is. Yeah.
But it was what is it? I know I saw somebody posting like that that it needs a reboot because it was very whitewashed.
Uh-huh.
And it's like it was, yeah,
Yeah.
like, seriously.
And the book really wasn't.
Oh, I've never read the book before.
No.
But
I don't remember it being so much, but yeah, who knows?
right, anymore, you never know anymore. But yeah, like they're just rebooting everything. And I'm like, okay, what about all these amazing books that are coming out that, new stuff instead of just reworking old stuff?
Well, I mean, I guess I'm a little bit guilty of that too, because it's not that I think that I can tell a story better, but some of the concepts of things, from back then, like the idea of kids going to this town and uncovering this, like, magic and having this sort of hot and heavy summer, thing like May.
Yeah, I mean, for stuff like that, because what the Lost Boys came out in what the
1987.
the 80s, yeah. So like the 80s, I think the stuff from like a lot of stuff from like the 80s and even the early 90s, like they're rebooting The Craft. I'm excited to see what they're gonna do with that.
So my problem with the movie reboots, and I think it remains to be seen, but like, who is going to do a better job than the girls from The Craft did?
I don't know. I guess what I read about that is that they're supposed to be expanding it because I mean The Craft was very A B C D were done.
Yeah, that's
it really didn't have like an overall like it was just this straight thing. So they're gonna kind of like expand onto it, which I mean nowadays if somebody tells you they're a witch or they're pagan or Wiccan or whatever, it's okay, cool, whatever. Let's go on. Let's go grab a burger.
right.
Yeah. Not so much of a taboo subject as it was when that movie first came out. It was very like, whoa, what now?
Well, and it was just also like the little Catholic schoolgirl uniform,
right.
And like the whole thing was just so
it was out there. It wasn't the norm anymore.
I just hope, okay, so my hope for a reboot of that would be that they would not have really glossy actors, because I think what was cool about that was that they were really raw. They were like, those girls were just like girls, and then they sort of transformed into these badasses. Like,
I think a lot of them, they were like no named actresses, weren't they? They hadn't done a lot of stuff, I don't think.
Well, yeah, I think Neve Campbell, she was in Party of Five, and like they had done things, but yeah, I think that they were not big stars. It was not like overproduced, and that's why it became a cult movie so fast. And that's sort of the same thing with the Lost Boys. Like that movie made a lot of careers.
Right.
It was so much fun.
I think it's kind of interesting. That's like one of the things that came out, you know, back then, and they're like, nobody's talking about where's their reboot.
I know. I don't want them to have a reboot. I saw the other day, I don't know if you saw that post I put on Facebook, but there's going to be a musical of the Lost Boys.
Oh God, yes, I saw that. I was like, whoa.
Yeah, what are they going to do?
Like, really, that's going to be very weird. That's going to be so weird.
Yeah.
So weird. I don't even know what they're going to do with that. They're trying to do everything into musicals now.
I know, it's interesting.
So weird. Well, thank you so much for coming on the show.
Thank you for having me.
Guys, of course, make sure you give the author a follow. Her buy link is in the description below. If you join us tomorrow, which is my birthday, happy birthday to me.
Happy birthday!
We will be talking with C.L. Walters of this trilogy of Swimming Sideways. It is the Cantos Chronicles, and these covers are
gorgeous.
Gorgeous. I know it's gorgeous.
Gorgeous.
They're so pretty.
Yeah.
And I'm actually going to be giving away this set of books, and they are signed. And she will be on tomorrow at 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. So I will catch you guys later. Bye.